bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. So my name's Osvaldo. I'm a good friend of Cesar. We've known each other for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. Um, so let's see, 29 years old, right? I am an investment advisor. Essentially what that means, we just manage people's money, um, in the most basic form. We take their money, their savings, whatever they have to invest, and then we put it in the stock market, right? We put it to grow. And the objective is to make the money. And sometimes that means that you make some good calls, sometimes you make some bad calls, but at the end of the day, the objective is to make them money, right? So let's see, my journey to where I'm at now, I was actually so I graduated from Valley High School, right, in Santa Ana. I went to San Diego, got my undergrad in public health at UC San Diego. I was there from 2013 to 2017. And then I graduated and realized that I couldn't do much with a bachelor's. So I knew I wanted to potentially get a master's, but I wasn't sure in what area, what field. I took a gap year, and then I was fortunate enough to have funding from a scholarship that I got at the end of in my senior year of high school. That was enough to cover me for a master's program. So I looked into a couple different public health programs, and I landed on the program that I eventually went into, which is the Hopkins Masters in Health Policy. So the my initial goal, right, or what I wanted to do, it's like I knew I wanted to go into this field of public health, which is essentially um it's the it's being able to bring about broad level change, whether it's systematic or maybe social. It could be local or it could be at the state level or federal level. It's bringing about change in a way that's going to improve people's lives, right? Specifically, by targeting their health, right? It could be things um, like food regulation, right? It could be the built environment, making sure the roads are safe, making sure that people have access to clean water, making sure that people have access to healthy foods, that people have access to parks. That's public health at a broad level. So I was very much interested in this field because it was the idea of being able to bring about broad level impact. To me, was attractive because I've always liked understanding why people are the way they are. And then and then you start seeing the environmental factors around them, right? There's social factors, and you start seeing, wow, like people are actually we're social beings, we're social creatures, and we're heavily influenced by the world around us, right? And by our immediate family members, and you have our friends, and you have the school system, then you have the local government, the state, and the federal, and then just the time period in which we live in, right? That has a big impact on who we are. So the more of those systems that we can target or that we can change, right? These some little things that might seem insignificant, you're essentially changing the rules by which people operate in. So that to me was a cool idea that I could potentially go into this policy route and then influence things like our food policy, our urban some of these urban projects around around housing, around even just, the way we police in certain neighborhoods, certain areas, right? That has an impact on people's well-being, right? If they feel safe or they feel threatened, that has an impact on their cortisol levels, their stress, their anxiety, which then can lead to health effects or, health risks down the line, right? Things like hypertension, diabetes, and all this stuff. So just, so that was that was eventually so that's what got me interested in this health policy route. So I was in Johns Hopkins from 2019 to 2021, actually 2018 to 2020. And then I started working for a consulting company out there doing healthcare policy research on Medicare programs. the focus here was on what they call value-based payments. And, there was a lot of aspects of the work that I liked and a lot of aspects that I didn't enjoy. And, I knew that I couldn't see myself staying there forever, and I wasn't very passionate about the work. And then I moved back after COVID, moved back home, and then, um, I was working remotely from, from home with my parents. And that time, it was the quality of my work started deteriorating, just losing that social aspect of being in the office, and then also just feeling very disconnected from my work, and then just personal struggles and conflicts that I was having within myself, in my relationships. I think it really culminated it to this, like, breaking point where I was like, "You know what? I if I don't leave, if I don't jump the ship, like, it's going down, it's sinking, and I need to get out and find something that I'm actually passionate about, that I can actually see myself thriving in." And so I quit my job in April 2023, and I wasn't sure where I was going. I was like, "You know what? I feel like I can use my skills somewhere else. I wanna do something maybe more locally." I'd applied to the city, I'd applied to the county, and then I applied to, like, UCI and some of the other local universities or colleges. Um, just positions anywhere from, like, administrative to more, like, statistical analysis. I wanna do more work with data, with numbers. That's something that I've always liked, that I've enjoyed doing. And so, during this time of applying, I figured, I'll go back, I'll enroll in some online courses for specifically, like, for like, data visualization or data management, uh, basic coding. I did some coursework on IT because I thought maybe that might be another angle that I might go down, just go the IT route. So anyways, it was this time where I was a little lost, right? I didn't have a direct path on where I wanted to go. And so this was between, like, April to August. So while I was doing some coursework, I was doing job applications, and then I started picking up. I did Uber for like 3 months, right, and Lyft, and it was a very humbling experience, right? Just the idea of, like, wow, like, I went from this, like, corporate job, being in a nice office with really smart people, to then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm basically a cab driver, you know,
Not to
and
say
it's
not to say that cab drivers are not intelligent, obviously.
Yeah, no, no, obviously, but there's obviously a stigma to it, right? And so that idea for me, it was very humiliating, I guess humbling for me, right? And again, I think you can be very successful in that business as a Lyft Uber driver, but the margins are very slim now. It's very hard to actually make a decent living as an Uber or Lyft driver,
Yeah,
just because it's so competitive now, especially because we are in a very crunched, um economic environment where people are now working second or third jobs. And so now you have more drivers on the road, right? Which means that there's more competition amongst the drivers, which just means less profit per driver,
yeah.
which makes it, I guess it makes it a little better for the customer, or for the people, for the riders.
Mhm,
But even then the rates haven't come down much.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, so I found myself in this situation, and I didn't have much luck. I think I had 1 interview, 2 interviews, and, nothing really successful.
Mm,
So I started working, then I started working moving office furniture with my brother and my friend. It was my friend's brother-in-law's company, right, with his brothers.
yeah,
They had this office moving company. Will install furniture, move the old furniture, put new furniture. And again, that was something where I would have never guessed, a year prior, that I would end up there. it was a fun job. It was a good experience to be around other guys, and then just being in that environment where I got to know the business owners, the brothers. These guys are very ambitious, very but they're all very humble, very respectful, um, very principled, and they had a very similar upbringing to me, to my siblings. So we got along. We just clicked. Me and my brothers, we could clicked well with them. And just seeing like them, how they manage their business and then their relationships amongst the brothers was very inspiring. It was very inspiring to me, and that really motivated me to be like, you know what? Like, why am I settling
Mm,
for just mediocrity? Like, I know that I have skills, I have talents, and I shouldn't let that go to waste.
mm,
And so then within like 2 months that I was working there with this company, I this opportunity came up through one of my brothers who met um my boss now. He has his own little investment advisory firm. And point is this man, right, he offered my brother this job where he told him, hey, you know what, my brother's retiring. I need somebody to take over his position. I think he'd be a good fit. And this is my brother doing an AC job for this guy at the time, right? He went to his house. They started talking about family, about God, and my boss just like he was really impressed with my brother, and he said, "Wow, like I want to work with somebody like you. Like I think you'd be a good asset, and you have the right values." So then, my brother's like, "Well, I'm not available, at the moment, and this is not something I'm really interested in. But yeah, I have a brother
mm,
that might want to do this." And at the time, he was referring to my other brother who was working at at Schools First, right? He was a teller at the time, and so he talked to him, and then my brother is like, "Well, you know what? No, I'm kind of busy at the moment," and
like that. Schools first.
yeah,
And for those who do not know, Schools First is a credit union in our
yeah,
it's a bank.
exactly. Yeah, so my brother was at the credit union, and yeah, he just said, "Well, you know what? It sounds like a cool opportunity, but I don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth." So then he referred me over to me. And then, yeah, the rest is kind of history. So yeah, I talked to my boss when I guess at the time it was just this stranger that I knew nothing about. I just knew that he was in investments and that he was basically managing people's money. But that's about as much as I knew. So I had when I graduated from my master's program and started working, I was very fortunate enough to graduate debt free. So
Mm,
I was on the Gates Millennium Scholarship. So this is a scholarship that started in the year 2000 by Bill Gates,
okay.
by the Gates Foundation,
Mhm,
and the goal was to award 20,000 scholarships over the course of it'll be 20 years, about 20 years, right? Thousand students per year for 20 years,
okay.
and the the objective was to fully fund them
Mhm,
up to for 10 years of schooling.
okay.
And so my undergraduate degree was fully funded,
Mhm,
and then for my master's, the master's program was capped at 45,000 per year of available funding. So my first year, I had to take out a loan of about $20,000 to cover the difference. But then the second year, my program was only about $15,000 because I was in my practicum or my what they call field placement. There was no more coursework, but I was still enrolled as a student while also working full time.
Let me stop you right there, Osvaldo, because I wanted to ask you about your scholarships um and your degree, because I think it's
Yeah.
very interesting. If you think about it, you got a public health master's degree. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. And now you're a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Nothing to
Correct.
nothing to do with public health. But but I want to talk about that because I think there's a lot to unpack there. But before we go there, I want to go back to what you were just saying. thank you for giving us that context and for um telling me that story. I know you had already shared it with me, and I always thought that it was so interesting that you were not even the first option that your brothers were thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like you were not even close to the n- top of the list for the role that you're doing right now. But it seems like it has been a perfect fit so far. Like,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah, no, that's right.
are you learning a lot? Are you enjoying your career so far?
I am. I really am. Yeah. And so the whole yeah, so the whole fit thing, it was because so my brother that I initially met, his name's Craig,
Hmm.
right? My boss. When he met him, he was doing a job. He was working for an HVAC company um at this man's house. So that's how he met my brother. And then my brother thought about my other brother that was working at the credit union. Well, because he just thought, oh, he's working at a credit union, finances, it makes sense.
Hmm.
But I've been investing since 2019 when I graduated. When I finished my first year, I started saving, and as soon as I paid off my loan from my first year, I just started saving my money and then investing. Like I went pretty aggressive, especially when COVID hit, the market tanked. I was like, okay, the Federal Reserve is going to step in. They're going to lower interest rates, and they're going to prop up this market.
What is investing? What do you mean when you say investing?
When I started investing,
Yeah, what um I guess because I'm thinking that some people might have questions like, what do we mean by investing? Like, yeah, what does that even mean? Like, we are all familiar with savings, right? Like, I know
yeah,
what saving means, but what does investing mean for you? And what did you invest on?
yeah, that's a good question. Well, let's just take before we go even into the financial investments that are investing
Hmm.
in financial terms. You're
I think
frozen.
I think I lost it for a second. Yeah, we're back.
You're back.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's a bit choppy here, but I think might be hold on.
I think I'm close to the airport, so I think that's
No, I think it might be on my end.
yeah,
All right. How is it now?
yeah,
I think it's better.
yeah. I can
Yeah.
hear. Yeah.
Okay.
So you were saying you were gonna
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question, right? So what is investing? Well, investing is in general, right? An investment in a more general terms, right? Not even speaking about finances specifically. It's the idea that you can take something, right? It can be your time. It can be something that you're gonna put away today, right? That's gonna be worth more in the future,
Mm,
right? So there's something that you you forgo something today to then you're putting it away either way that so it's if it's like let's say your time, right? Um, it's like I think the best example of this it's yourself, right? What we do with our lives, right? When we go to work or when we go to school,
mm,
right? We're investing in ourselves where it's like, okay, I'm gonna go to school for 4 years, and that 4 years, it's worth something to me, right? What can I do in 4 years of my life? I can keep going to my job, right, every day, making $10 or $15 an hour, right? Or I can go to school for 4 years for $40,000, right? I think that's sort of what the average tuition now comes out to about 40,000, maybe even more. But the average student is coming out with about $40,000 worth of student debt. So the idea is that you go on to school for the 4 years with the expectation that 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 amount of time that you put in is going to pay off. It's
mm,
gonna it's gonna be worth more in the future, right? So you're gonna be able to make more money, right? Be able to make 3 times or 4 times as much as that $15 an hour today.
mm,
And we can also see investments in like livestock, right? Back in the day with our grandparents in Mexico,
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna buy myself this piece of land for X amount of pesos, and I'm gonna buy some cows, and then those cows are gonna have more cows, right? I'm gonna breed them, and I could sell some for meat, or I could milk them, and I'm gonna start making money off of each cow, right? Over the long term, it's gonna pay off more than what I initially put in.
Mhm.
I've been investments. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear, yes. Yeah, I think it got off for a second. So in other words, what we're saying is that, well, what you're saying is that investment is essentially giving up something now in order to gain something bigger later,
Exactly.
right? It could be your time, it could be your money, it could be possessions. You give it up now, but you're expecting to gain more of that in
Exactly.
a certain amount of time. Okay.
Right, and this goes back to the idea of also of of this goes back to the idea of delayed gratification, right? We also know this that um from a psychological perspective, or from a we there's been studies on, there's what's called like the Stanford marshmallow experiment. Have you heard about that?
No, no, what is that?
So the idea is that they went to a couple of they went to an elementary school, right? They looked at elementary age kids, I think maybe kinder, first grade,
Mm,
and then they asked them, okay, they gave them, they presented them with some options, right? They say, okay, um, I will give you one marshmallow now, or if you wait 10 minutes, we'll give you two,
mm,
right? If you wait 30 minutes, we'll give you five. So the idea is like that there was also, they found this to be some that, and they what they found was that the kids that could wait, and they were able to make that trade-off and say, well, you know what? That's worth more to me, right? Those two marshmallows in 10 minutes, that is worth more to me than one marshmallow right now. And I'm willing to delay this instant gratification right now to expect a better payoff in the end. And what they found, that these kids that were able to delay their gratification right now for a bigger payoff, that they tended to be more successful in life. And obviously, when you talk about success, that's also can be very subjective. But I guess in clear financial terms, right? They were better off financially in the future. But then there's been a lot of criticism of these kinds of studies where they say, oh, it's because, the kids that weren't able to forgo is because they're poor, or because they're hungry, right? Because they don't have the means. So, which potentially could be true, right? I mean, we don't know these things, but we do know that in life, right? And even just from, I guess, even we can even bring in the faith component to this, right? But there's also something very real to be said about our own spiritual journeys, right? In our spiritual path. That that's what sin it calls us, is to have that immediate gratification right now, right? That's like, oh, just enjoy yourself, right? Just follow your passions, right? Live your true self, like, and whatever your body wants, just indulge in it, right? But we know that that only leads to enslavement, right? In the sense that that's not real freedom, because then we're enslaved to our passions, and we're not able to freely love and enter into relationships. So there's also a lot of value in 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 denying that immediate gratification, right? That what our body wants.
mhm,
And so part of, and right, it's like almost like two sides of the same coin, right? When how I think about my financial
mhm,
health, right? My relationship with money, with my finances, it's very similar to how I see my spiritual journey, right? My spiritual health, in the sense that it's like, okay, I'm willing to put in the work. So for my own spiritual health, I'm willing to deny certain pleasures or passions that my body wants, with the expectation that that's going to build discipline, that's going to build resiliency, so that then I can fully love and enter into the relationships without sin holding me back,
mhm,
right? And so that is giving you a better payoff in the end, even though in the short term it sucks you're denying yourself, but in the long term, that's going to pay dividends, right? When you're able to practice that spiritual discipline of prayer, of penance, of fasting, um, that has its rewards, right? And you will bear the fruit. And ultimately, what we want, what we're working towards, is heaven,
Right.
right? That is the ultimate payoff.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate reward, right? And so the way I see my finances, my investments, it's very similar to that, right? It's like, you know what, I'm willing to go forego this, but the world says, oh, you need to acquire this right now, right? You need to have this flashy car. You need to just buy. uh,
I was just gonna say that the perfect example would be a car.
yeah,
Yeah. You know that
it's
that's one of the biggest, um, like the biggest debt that people have today is their car. Like one of their biggest after your rental, your rent, it's a car. And it's especially here in California, this is
yeah,
to be true. Like most people are driving new cars that they cannot afford and going more into debt. And it's
yeah,
in a lot of it's really essentially keeping people in poverty and not letting them invest and not letting them save. So
yeah,
to your point, like if you let go of a brand new car today and you drive a used car that will take you from point A to point B, you can start saving now. Like you could start investing those extra dollars that you will pay in a new car today and
yeah,
even a nicer car in the future.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the average car loan right now is about $23,000 that Americans, you know, the American consumer has an estimated $100,000 worth of household debt, right? So that includes your mortgage, that includes credit card loans, that includes student loans. I think the average student loan right now, the outstanding debt that people owe under student loan, I think it's about $38,000.
Hmm.
The average credit card loan, or credit card debt is about $6,500,
Mm.
and that number is really on all-time high. So we're seeing a record high um, debt. We're seeing record high inflation. We're seeing people, and the it's fascinating how, you know, everyone's crunched, but people are still willing to take on more and more debt, right? To
Yeah.
to live this lifestyle that they feel, you know, there's this thing that's saying, well, there's a there's a very popular saying. I'm sure most people here probably heard it, but it's saying that people people spend money they don't have to buy things they don't need to impress the people they don't even like, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so they live like this, and so at the end of the day, it's like you're on this rat wheel, right? You're trying you're at the moment you get that car or you get that fancy new gadget or phone, it's like, okay, now on to the next thing, right? On to the next thing, because like you're always chasing the next big high, the next big thing.
Mhm.
And it can become an addictive feeling, right? That it's like that you're on this like continuous journey to just grasp the next thing.
Mhm.
And the thing is that it's if you think about it, it's normal as human beings. We need something to strive for, right? Something that motivates us. Um, and the way the American consumer has been, that we've been primed to think that this is life. It's like it's about acquiring. It's about fitting in, right? It's about getting that next thing. It's like that gives us purpose, right? That gives us mission, that gives us drive. And if you can continuously push out new things, right? New cars, new phones, then essentially you've created this treadmill that you keep people on, right? And so people live their lives on this just treadmill that's going nowhere. It's like you're chasing the next big thing. And yeah, that's gonna work in the short term, right? But you get to the end of your life and you're like, what was this all for?
Mhm.
Right?
But then you that can happen. Even let's say that even if you don't buy into that um mentality of just consuming and buying the new things every time, we could also fall into that trap by simply investing in the stock market. Like I know for myself, for example, I was just talking to Amanda yesterday about this, that I feel sometimes that I can get so absorbed by my financial planning that I forget to enjoy the moment. You know,
Yeah.
I think I showed you my Excel sheet, right? With my projections, 10 years, 20 years from now, I'm gonna save this much, I'm gonna invest this much. And I'm looking at it every day. All right, today my portfolio is up, or it's down, or today or the next day is up, it's up. And then I see like my 3-year-old comes to me, and when I'm working on that, it's like, Daddy, Daddy, look. a new drawing that I did, and like, wait. I'm busy right now, and I think that that is also a risk that we can have, even if you are good at saving and not spending your money on things that you don't need. Does that happen to you? Does that
Yeah,
stay with you?
yeah. No, that's a very good point, and I think it all comes down to living what's called nel mezzo, right, in the middle, the Italian saying. It's like there is something obviously, there's something very practical about projecting, about planning, right? But you don't wanna let that, like you're saying, consume you, and I think one of the ways that you can mitigate that feeling of, like, one, I'm constantly just chasing the future, right? As opposed to living right now. It's like just have your time where it's like, okay, obviously that's what work hours are meant to be, right? Where can separate that. Okay, this is my work time
Mhm,
to work on my investments, to work on this. And then once I close my computer, all right, I'm off the clock and it's now I'm gonna be present with my family, right?
mhm,
So it's about setting those boundaries for yourself. But I think what's made it difficult for me, I don't stress out about my finances on the weekend or I'm with friends,
mhm,
especially if it's going well. And for me, one thing that has helped me is just keeping a very diverse portfolio, keeping my investments diverse. So
mhm,
if something doesn't go that well, it's fine. I have a good amount of cash set aside where it's like if the stock market were to go drop 20-30%, I'm okay. I
mhm,
have that peace of mind. I'd have that mental insurance. So it allows me to be present and not having to live in this constant anxiety, right? Of like, oh, I'm just thinking about it because that's my security, right?
yeah,
But like at the end of the day, I'm also very fortunate that I do have something to fall back on, right? Even if I were to lose all my money tomorrow, I'm very fortunate that I'm at home with my parents.
mhm,
I don't have a family, right? I don't have anybody to take care of,
mhm,
and that gives me a lot of peace,
mhm,
right? But I do know that one day, I mean, the one day my goal is to be able to lead a family, right? To be able to provide and and to have that security for them, right? And so I'm front loading as much as I can right now, right? And building a strong foundation so that I can focus on being present there with them, right? So that I can focus on the relationship piece and not let finances be a point of like constant anxiety or fighting
mhm,
because I've seen that happen in other people in certain families and even within the church, right? Even though like yeah, we're taught about like okay, you shouldn't idolize money, you shouldn't obsess over it. But the reality is that we need it to live.
mhm,
And even people that have been in the church for a long time, like this is still something that comes up continuously. It's a continual point of contention.
mhm,
And it's something that I didn't see. I was very fortunate that I didn't see my parents fight or argue about money or them stressing out about it. I was very fortunate that my dad was pretty good with his money, right? He was very responsible, he was very conservative. He didn't invest in the stock market per se, but he administered it well, right? He administered his money very well for the family, and my mom was also very supportive, and they were on the same page. So and my mom was very good at like, "Hey, we're looking for deals, or we're gonna buy secondhand clothes, or we don't need to buy, we don't have a fancy new car." And my mom and my dad had the same philosophy when it comes to money, right? It's like we live below our means. We're not trying to impress people, right? It's just like we're gonna we're gonna work hard, right? My dad's like, "Well, I'm gonna work hard to provide." And at this point, like we just need the essentials to be safe, to be secure,
mhm,
and then the rest is for you guys to grow. He's like, "I want you guys to be in a good, healthy environment where you guys can focus on just being good citizens, being good Christians, right?" And that to my dad, in fact, like my parents were never the type to say, "Oh, you need to be somebody in life, right? You need to make a lot of money." It was like, no, you need to respect other people. You need to be respectful for yourself. Trust God, right? Love God, love other people. And it was, I'm very fortunate to have grown up in the environment that I did, where I never, I never felt like money was a point of like anxiety for my family, for my parents. And so that really gave me a sense of security within myself. and it allowed me to be sort of free with my even now, right, with my finances. Just having that background, having that culture that was instilled in me, right? That's like money is not meant to flash or to impress other people.
There's a means to an end.
It's a means to an end, right? It's a tool, and it's a means to provide safety and provide for your family, right? That should be the priority.
Tell me,
And yeah, go ahead.
sorry to cut you off as well. I'm curious to know how then did you get in, um, started with investing? So how was that first? What went through your mind and how did you get started?
Yeah, so and I've always liked the idea of, well, I guess when did I first start learning about the stock market? Oh, I remember actually. I do remember.
Yes.
And I can point to it a very specific day.
Mhm.
So I was in I believe it was my third year. I was working as a high school tutor. So this was in San Diego.
Okay.
I was I was going out to San Isidro High School. It's near the border. So I would do my daily commute from the university, from campus,
Mhm.
down to almost the board, basically going all the way to the TJ, San Isidro, Tijuana border.
Mhm.
And I would do this drive. It was about 25-minute drive to work. And this one day I show up, and then turns out the class that I was tutoring in, it was a math class. I think there were 10th graders, and they had a guest speaker on finance, and the idea was to teach them about compound interest and how you start setting aside a bit of money today, right? And if you have a specific uh, rate of return, right? Let's say you're getting 8 or 10 or 12%, right?
Mhm.
That over time, this money just compounds, and then so they use this formula. Look, if you have this amount, and
This was at a
you
high
save
school?
this.
This
Yes,
was
this
at
high school.
so
Yeah, it was.
you were listening to this during a high school presentation.
Yeah, it was.
Amazing.
Yep.
Because I wanna talk about that too. Because this is the first time I hear a high school had any sort of presentation, on finances, which
Yeah. So
so crazy. I think it should be taught more, but please continue. Yeah, I'm so curious.
yeah, it was. Yeah, and I had heard about the stock market, right? I had heard about investment in Wall Street and all this stuff, but I didn't really know what it was. Like I wasn't like like it was just like, oh, that's a thing that like white people do, right? Americans do. It's just like, oh yeah, Mexicans, we don't do that, right?
I
And and so for me, it was just like this foreign concept, and I never thought that I would be doing it myself. And so I get to this class, and then they have this speaker. I forgot from what company he was from, but he represented some kind of wealth management company, and so it was also like free marketing for them, for this company. So they had this representative come, and he was talking to the high school students, and the idea was to give them a lesson on compound interest, on savings, on investments. But it was like a very, it was just like a general introduction. And then at the end, so he shows this graphic, right? Oh, well, where can you get this type of return, right? He's like, the bank's not going to give you this, because it was like, oh, you put in a savings account, you get this 5%. So I'm like, what bank is giving that kind of return, right? And then at the end, that's when he says, this is what the stock market can give you, these kinds of returns you can get in the stock market, right? And then he starts talking about the S&P 500, and then he shows this graphic, but to 100 years, and it just like this like crazy, essentially like a parabola almost, right? Where you just see it go, like, almost straight up. Huh?
up and up.
Yeah. So then it's like, well, wow, like, that sounds a little too good to be true. And so that sort of piqued my interest at the time. This was maybe 2016, 20 around maybe 2016. But again, I didn't have any money to invest. I was in college. Most of my money was going to tuition, just living expenses. So then once I graduated college, and then I started working a little part-time job. I didn't have any debt, So that I was saving some money. I did have savings, so I opened up a brokerage account with Robinhood, and I started playing around with some stocks, right? But I wasn't doing anything. Um, I didn't know much of what I was doing. I was like, okay, you know what? I'll buy a stock of Apple or buy a stock of this, right? And then what was that?
Yeah, with this.
This was probably 2017. Yeah, 2017 is when I think is when I got my first account with Robinhood.
And so, by the way, can you take it? My mic very low.
What was that?
Can you hear me okay?
Not anymore.
Uh, See. Uh, the best about that. How about now? Can you hear me better?
I can put my volume up.
Uh, I want to the sound. But now.
Hello?
Oh shoot! I think I have my mic. Oh, now can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I just noticed that my mic was off. Testing. All right, there you go. Um, Question for you. So, how long from the moment you heard that presentation in your high school about the stock market and compound interest, how long from that until you opened your first brokerage account?
It must have been like 2 years, I'd say.
2 years. Okay. And then
Actually, no. It was about a year. It was about a year later, I think.
okay. And how did you find out about Robinhood? And maybe explain very briefly what Robinhood is.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know what Robinhood is, it's an application. It's what's called a brokerage firm, or they have they allow people. You can open up an account with them with Robinhood, and then you can buy and sell stocks on their platform. You can choose from a couple of different stocks. I think you can also you can you can buy what's called index funds. Essentially, index funds, just essentially a basket of stocks, so you don't have to pick individual stocks.
Or
You're not sure
ETFs.
what you're doing, or you don't. Yeah, if you don't feel comfortable in picking individual stocks, you can buy what's called an exchange traded fund. It's essentially it's just a bundle of a bunch of stocks, and it lowers your risk. And generally, it's a good way to get started, and it's one of the best index funds you can buy. Is what's called the S&P 500, which is the top 500 companies in the US. So if one of them does so if if one company fails, right, if it's doing bad, they'll remove it from the list, and then they'll put in a better company. But in a way, you're always sticking with the best performers. So it's a very good way to invest, and one of it's really the considered the gold standard for stock investments.
And why Robinhood? Why did you decide to open an account with them?
Well, it was just very easy. So Robinhood, just at the time, I think they were the only ones offering commission-free trading,
Mm-hmm.
meaning you can buy and sell without having to pay a fee per trade. Whereas a lot of the other big brokerage firms like Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they were all charging commission fees and trading fees, and just simply have for even just to have the account open. I think they were charges monthly fees or annual quarterly fees.
So that would
And
eat into your gains.
exactly. Which then Robinhood came along and said, you know what, all that stuff, we're doing away with it. And the idea was to help the small guys, right? The
Mm-hmm.
people like you and me, people that only have $100 to invest, or that only have $50 to put in a month,
Mm-hmm.
$10 for the month, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could start with a very small amount, and you wouldn't, because it wouldn't make sense, right? If you think about it, if someone only has $100 to put in every month, but then the brokerage account is charging them $20 for the month, it's like, well, that's eating away. That's 20% of your money just going away to paying fees, right?
Maybe explain what the concept of buying a stock. Like what is that? Because I think when I found out about that, I thought it was so cool that and I'll let you explain what that is.
Yeah, so a piece of a stock essentially is, or what a stock is, it's a piece of a company, of a public company that says that you own, that you are an owner, a part owner of that company. So if that company does well, right, that means that the company might pay its shareholders, right? As a shareholder, you might receive some of that that revenue. What's called, and you can be paid out in the form of what's called a dividend.
Mm,
Some companies don't pay any money, but if the company does well, it might mean that more people are gonna wanna be part owner of that company.
mhm,
So if it becomes more attractive to buy, then it raises the prices of that stock
mhm,
because it means that it's in demand, right? People wanna be a part of that company, so they're willing to pay up for it. So if a stock, let's say, like, let's take NVIDIA, for example, right, which they just did a 10-for-1 stock split, which up until, like, 3, 4 months ago,
mhm,
the stock went up to, was it like 1,200 almost, right? And then they did that stock split of 10 for 1. So now it's trading at about $140. But let's say you could have bought that stock like 10 years ago,
mhm,
right, for like $10. And now it's trading at 140. So it more than like 10x, right? It basically is now a multiple of 15.
yeah,
So, well, all that means is that that company went from, it was making computer chips or graphics cards for gaming, and they started going into the realm of artificial intelligence. They started doing a lot of work for like NVIDIA. For Tesla. They were providing a lot of the chips for Tesla's um, self-driving cars and all this stuff. And then they really gained a lot of traction with this whole AI movement.
mhm,
And because they got in a large amount of new investors, right? People that were willing to buy their chips, and that now they're there's a big interest in what NVIDIA is doing, right? So that means now they have more clients.
mhm.
There's a lot of demand for the product that they provide. And
So
yeah,
so just to clarify, you can own a little piece of this company by buying their stock,
exactly.
and not just this company. Like you could buy Apple, Coca-Cola, Tesla, like any company that is publicly traded, you can become a part owner of their company.
Yeah, and I guess I'll maybe simplify it even more, right? Let's say, just to give a real example of like what this actually looks like in real life, right? When a company goes public,
Mhm,
and what does that mean, right?
mhm,
When a company's public, all I mean is that, let's say I want to start my own business, right? I want to do, it's just a lemonade stand, right? But I don't have anything. I don't have lemons. I don't have the stand up, the wood to build my lemonade stand, and I don't have any money. But let's say I make the calculations and I say, you know what, I'm gonna need $100
mhm,
to start my business, but I don't have it. So I'm gonna go pitch my idea to investors,
mhm,
and I'm gonna try to raise some money. So I'm gonna try to get $100 from investors, right? But I need this money to start my business. So I'm gonna say, hey, you know what, Cesar, I have an idea. I want to start this lemonade business, and I think it can be very profitable. And then, okay, well, what's your idea? Well, look, I want to sell lemonade on the street, but I need lemons and I need cups. I need this, right? And then you lay out a whole plan. And, okay, you know what? Sounds like a good idea. And then you say, okay, I'm gonna sell 10 shares of my company. So essentially, I'm gonna if someone buys one share, right? The 10 shares, essentially, if you sell those 10 shares to 10 people, right? Each person takes one share.
mhm,
That means each person becomes 1/10 owner of your company. So now it's like, if you buy that share off of me, right? You bought one share, and because there's 10 shares, you own 10% of the company now.
Mm-hmm.
So now my lemonade stand starts doing well. Let's say now we make all of a sudden make $1,000, right? And now you have the right of to 10% of that equity, what's called equity, right? So in theory, you control you that that from those $1,000 that we made, right? You can take 10% of that,
Which is a
which is
$100.
$100, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's if, like, let's say the company we were to liquidate, right? We would just the company says, you know what, we're gonna get bought off, or somebody then let's say then we have another guy that says, you know what, I want to buy your lemonade stand.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, okay, what is it worth? Okay, I'll sell you my lemonade stand for $1,000, right? Because it's making money.
Mm-hmm.
So then because you're a part owner, then you would have the right to that equity. Does that make sense? So
So explain that again. So just to clarify.
okay, so because you bought a stock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now my company's public, and because you bought a piece of my company, whatever happens with the company, you technically have a say in that, right? Because even as an investor, right now with the stock market, there's, not to get too much into the weeds, right? But when a company goes public, they have a board, and then that makes the decisions. But then some of the decisions can actually be voted through the shareholders. So you can cast a vote for the board, which then the board can decide how they're going to spend the money, who you're going to bring on.
You become a shareholder of that company. So you have a say in that company, like a small say, depending on how much you buy, but you have a say.
Yeah. And then you can also, let's say the company, okay, there's a good example, recent example with Twitter, right? So Twitter was was bought. It was a public company that was then bought by a private owner, Elon Musk, right? He took it off the exchange. So what happened there? It's like, hey, my shares, buying the company, let's say 10 years ago, let's say I bought the share of Twitter for $10. And when Elon Musk bought it, let's say it was at 100. So Elon Musk, okay, the company is worth this much amount of money. So each stock is worth this much. So if
Mhm.
you want to buy this company from me, right? You want to buy Twitter, you have to pay out all the shareholders because they own it. So that means that he had to pay, and everybody that owned Twitter, there was a certain price that they agreed to. So that was a selling price. So if you own Twitter, and when Elon Musk agreed to buy it, he had to pay essentially out all the shareholders, right? Everybody got paid out.
So if you had stocks in Twitter at that time, you would have gotten paid an amount, depending on how much stock
Exactly.
you had. That's very cool. What was the first stock that you bought? Do you remember?
Well, I don't remember. I think, what was it? I really don't remember. So I think I had a Go. One of the first ones I bought was at a GoPro. I think I did like a share in Nvidia. I
Mm.
had, I think
Did you sell Nvidia?
at the time, yeah, because I moved over I liquidated. What was it in
Mm-hmm.
2019? I'm over everything to from Robinhood to M1 Finance because I didn't want to. I moved away from doing individual stock picks, and
Uh-huh.
I'm just doing index fund investing, dollar cost averaging with a robo advisor. So everything I had in Robinhood, I moved it over, and I went away from trying to just pick my own stocks, just letting the robo advisor do it, and I just went long term ETFs, index funds.
Do you regret that decision, or you think it was a good move?
No, it was a good move because
Yes.
I I wasn't I wasn't living in this, like, a constant anxiety of, like, checking my stocks. It was like, since it was like on autopilot. Like, all right, I'm setting aside a set amount of dollars every week, and that's just reinvesting, and I'm buying just the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the market goes up or down, I'm buying each week. And my account was like, it was little fluctuations, right? Rather than, like, seeing these big spikes and then these big dips, it was like, all right, your account goes down half a percent or 1% or 2% on a really bad day. But it's like, it's a slow growth, or it's up half a percent today, up 1%. But over time, you see this gradual.
Is that what you're still doing today, or do you have like individual stocks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a mix of both. My retirement accounts are all long-term index funds. I have a
Index funds.
small retail account. I have a retail account that I do sort of individual stock picks,
Mhm,
and but even then, it's pretty diversified. Like I think I have maybe like about 20 different holdings that I have
mhm,
in that account, and that I'm more active on that account.
mhm,
And really, it's I'm kind of testing my skill. It's a way for me to like practice and see, okay, like, are my assumptions right? Am I actually like, or is my judgment incorrect, right? And sometimes
mhm.
it's not, sometimes it is. But I'm trying to see if I can beat the market, right? With smaller count, just sort of looking at the proportion of my gains to my initial investment. Like, okay, how am I doing relative to the market? And so, yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I think we had this conversation a while back, but this is how I started in investing in the stock market because of this uh, conversation that we're having right now. It wasn't with you, obviously, but at the time, an investor came to the company that I was working in at the time, and he came to give a presentation on our retirement account. But I noticed that the rate at which it was growing was very conservative, like very small. And that's when I realized that what a retirement account does, they take your money and they invest it in index funds or stocks that they think will do well, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then me being the rebel that I am, I'm like, but wait a second, I want to have a say in what I do with my money, right? And I think it was a very, now that I think about it, it's a very naive thought because I'm not an expert. I'm not a financial expert. So I don't know. I at the time I much less I didn't know how to read um financial reports or how to assess a stock or a company, but I decided to do it anyway. So that's when I started with Robinhood. I opened my first brokerage account. I started looking into stocks, into companies, and the way I've seen it is like, okay, only going to invest in companies that according to my opinion, in my view, are just too big to fail. Um, like the Magnificent Seven, they say, or at some point it was five, now it's seven, and maybe it's six. I don't know, but but in my mind, it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it true that, and I think you told me this, like, if those stocks were to go down, completely down, like let's say tomorrow they go broke, it's not just those stocks, like there is something fundamentally wrong with the economy. And yes, it could happen, but then that means that your money is essentially also worthless. So in my mind, I am investing heavily on these stocks in the long term. I'm not expecting to make a lot of money tomorrow, but I'm thinking about 5 years, 10 years down the road. If I keep investing in these companies, there should be substantial gain based on past performance and based on how the economy is going. Um, don't you think somebody should see better returns in the long term than simply putting it in a index fund on like ETF?
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is that, um, if you can pick the top performers today, right? The ones that are doing well, let's say Apple, Amazon,
Mhm,
Facebook, Nvidia. You can pick just the 7, right? And they could be doing well for the next maybe 10, 15 years.
mhm,
But the reality is that there's been a lot of companies, right, in the past that people thought would never go broke, right? And they did, like, Yahoo, Xerox, and they were all-time
mhm,
valuations with the whole advent of the internet. There was a bunch of companies that were leading, right? They were pioneering new waters, and they thought, well, everybody thought, "Oh, this will never fail." Like the banks.
AT&T.
Yeah, AT&T. Then we have in the 1930s, you have the big railway companies that were just making a ton of money, right? And people
Mhm,
thought, "Oh, yeah, this is super safe," right? They have a lot of money, they're expanding, they're growing, they're pioneering, they can't fail, right? But the reality is that no one knows where we're gonna be in the future, like how different things are gonna go, right? Because it could be that we completely changed the way we think about social media, right? Or
Mm,
Facebook is right now they're trying to really bring together this whole metaverse and the whole thing with AR, the augmented
mhm,
reality and VR.
mhm,
So they are pioneering a new way to interact um online, right? That they're trying to take it away from like being in front of a screen to being having a much more immersive experience that essentially brings the digital world into the real world.
mhm,
Layer it. So that could be a reality we go into, or it just can entirely flop, right? And then we might even see that that never comes to fruition. And Meta, that they're investing so much money, all this technology can fail, and then they go broke, right? Because they're not seeing a return on their investment. Or a competitor comes around, right? And then they completely wipe them. Or with like Nvidia, maybe AMD comes up with some better technology and they surpass them. I mean, not and anything could happen, right?
mhm,
Or some natural disaster that completely wipes somebody's assets. You know, they're building their infrastructure, their data centers, and
mhm,
then the 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 company takes a massive hit and then they have to go bankrupt or whatever.
right,
So any of that can happen, right? So the risk of having just like 7 or 10, that's always the risk, right?
mhm,
And so in the past, let's say in the 2000s where you would have just picked the 7 top companies at the time, in the year 2000, I think out of those 7, maybe 1 or 2 would still be up today, right? So that's the risk. Um, when you're thinking about 30-year, 40-year time horizon, that's the risk of staying concentrated in a few companies that are doing well. And the thing is that if you're gonna be very proactive about like monitoring the health of those companies, there's nothing bad with like staying concentrated in the short term. Maybe it can be a few years, right? Maybe it can be the next 10 years. But it's also it's very possible that one of those companies is just the dynamic is gonna change, right? Because the market changes, the
mhm,
incentives change, their trends come and go, right? Or there's some regulation or the government says, "Hey, we're gonna ban this," right? Or we're gonna
mhm,
put limits on the power of Google, right? That's something we're seeing now,
right,
that the government is really trying to step in and really regulate Google and trying to break them up. You can't do this, you can't do that, you're a monopoly. So that's gonna affect their bottom line. So Google is gonna see less revenue, they're gonna see less growth. So that's gonna bring down its valuation, it's gonna sell off. It's not gonna grow as fast, or it's not gonna grow at all for the next maybe 5, 6 years, right? If the government really steps in and tries to crack down on their business.
yes, that's a great point. I mean, that's something that I'm noticing. But so what would you suggest to somebody that wants to start investing? Um, would you say that it's a good idea to buy a few stocks or just to go straight into ETFs?
I think you can do a mix of both. I think a good strategy would be, one, you wanna before you start investing, I think you should have a good amount of money saved up, well, at least save up. You have to have an emergency fund, right?
Uh-huh.
Or I would say my recommendation is 3 months.
Mhm,
Um, but if you don't have but that all depends on, like, what are your expenses? Like, if you're fortunate enough to be with your parents and you don't have a mortgage, you don't have a family to take care of, then you could be a little bit more aggressive, you could take on a bit more risk. But if you have a family, you have a mortgage, you have a car payment, you have payments that you have to make, your phone, you have to sit down and calculate, "Okay, what are my expenses? What are my monthly expenses? And
mhm,
after my expenses, how much money do I have left over to save and invest?"
mhm.
And then once you've made that calculation, or start setting aside enough money for maybe a month or 2 of your monthly expenses. So in case you lose your job, in case something happens, right? In case an emergency,
Yeah.
you don't wanna have to pull from your investments.
Mhm,
Because, let's say that you're relying on your investments, right, to pull you out of an emergency.
mhm.
But what happens if it's an emergency, right, or the economy crashes, then your investments could see a 20-30%
Yeah.
decline, in which now you have less money to make up for your expenses, you know, to cover your expenses.
Yeah.
So I would say for anyone trying to start, I would say, focus on building a small little safety net first for just some like psychological insurance, but also some financial insurance. Once you
Mhm.
have that, I would start putting maybe um let's say 30% of that into just the S&P 500, right? Or 50%. Go 50% in the S&P 500. The other 50% start picking, maybe pick a few stocks that you like, and then that will start getting you um um get your feet wet into what the stock market is. And I think
Mhm.
there's something cool about just you're following your investments. Okay, how's it doing? How's it performing?
Mhm.
And then I think that's a good way to get started on evaluating a company. Start looking at their financials, right? Start following the news,
Mhm.
and that's something that a lot of people might not have, right? So if you don't have the time to be doing research, again, you can always go with just pick the top companies right now, right? Kind of what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
Well, after the Nvidia is Taiwan Semiconductors, AMD, Facebook, right? Meta, these companies that are doing well and are that are probably gonna be around for a few more years.
Mhm.
But yeah, so if I had to say to get started, you can do a mix of both, right? You can go
Mhm.
into an index fund, but then also start with a few stock picks that you like.
Mhm. And just for a quick calculation, so let's say that somebody wants to, because you mentioned two things: your safety net, so save enough money that you can pay your expenses. Let's say 2 or 3 months, like in the event that you lose your job. I think that's a great idea. And I think a lot of people. So you mentioned that, and also start investing small, right? Um, but a lot of people think, well, I don't even. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I don't have money to save. Like I cannot afford having a safety net. But I think that we underestimate how much we can actually save on a given month. And I know that personally. I mean, we are as um uh single income family. We have two children, one on the way. My wife works more than me at home with the kids, but we don't have an income from her. And I don't make six figures. Okay. So, and I live in Orange County, California. We both do, right? Which is one of the most expensive counties to live in the US at the moment. And I'm not saying this to brag or anything, but I can still save. And I cannot save thousands of dollars a month, but I can save maybe $1 a day. People underestimate how much $1 a day can go in a year. And I don't know. I think what do you think about this idea of, let's say you don't have an emergency fund right now, but you do have $1 or two to spare on it, like daily, or even $10 a month or $20 a month. Wouldn't you think it's a good idea to put that in an index fund and see that grow on over a period of time? Like
Yep.
what would $20 a month be, let's say in 5 years from now, if you invest in the stock market?
I can tell you right now. I'm actually
Okay.
have a
A calculator.
yeah.
All right, let's do
So
that.
right now, in 5 years. So let's say if you put your money in the stock market, or actually, let's just pause. Let's just say you put $5 on actually, how much you say $20 a month?
$20 a month, yes.
$20.
Which is cheaper than what is it? Than a phone bill, which is probably less than what
Twen-
people spent on coffee on a given month, or I think $20 a month is very doable.
Yeah. So $20 a month for 5 years. You have that money sitting in a bank account, and you're just saving it in a bank account with no interest really.
Mhm.
That's $1,200.
In five
If
years.
you had put it yeah, in 5 years. If you had it in the stock market, that's $1,600 in
1600.
so you just made $400 and more. Now, if you go but the power of compound interest really comes in with time.
Mhm.
So let's say you go 10 years,
Mhm.
10 years for $20 a month. That's $4,200.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, if you go, let's say 30 years, that's $58,000 in just saving $20 a month.
Right. And some people will say, well, but I mean, I have to wait all that time and that's not even a lot of money. But I will ask, can you just pull $4,000 out of your pocket out of thin air right now? No. All you're doing is setting $20 aside and letting compound interest do the work for you. And it's almost as having a mini part-time job,
Yeah.
And I think again, $20 is really not a lot of money on a month. What if you
Yeah,
were to double that? Then you will were to double your gains.
exactly. Yeah, imagine just $40 a month, right? I
Yes.
think that's still pretty doable. That's a little more than a dollar a day,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? That's in 30 years you would have $116,000.
Imagine. Imagine.
And then if
That's
yeah,
no, go ahead.
and then like even just more short term, right? In 10 years, what is that? Let's calculate that. That's $8,400.
What about 5 years?
5 years, $3,000.
$3,000. So let's say that you save uh what that is saving how much a month? 40?
$40 a month. Yeah.
Imagine you're saving about a dollar and 50, a dollar and 25 cents a day, or $40 a month. In 5 years, you can take a vacation uh with that money, or I don't know, you can buy a used car, or and that's what's the interest, what's the percentage rate for this, like the return?
Yeah, this is with 12%. This is about what the market
That's average,
this
right?
this is the average market return. Yeah.
Potentially could be more.
Yep.
I think just this year we've seen the market, the SP 500. I think the return has been 30%.
Yeah, something close to there. Yeah, about 26, 20. Well, just year to date, or you're talking about the
The year,
1 year return?
the 1 year return.
I'm looking right now. It says 40% just this past year.
Imagine. So this is just to say for anybody that is listening that the only thing, chances are, but the only thing stopping you from making money investing in the stock market today is yourself. Um, I think it really requires a small change of mentality to just start seeing those returns. You know, and this is really what I want to get across to people, that you don't need a lot of money to start investing. It's like the snowball effect, right? Like it starts really small, but in a few years that grows. And just like that grows, I think a lot of people can relate to this, that they look at their credit card balance and they're like, oh shoot, like where did I spend all that money in, right? Imagine that if you could see that in the opposite way, where, oh shoot, like where did that money come from? Like all of a sudden you have a substantial amount of cash in your portfolio, in your savings. And I will even say that I will, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you can say this, but I would encourage people that instead of putting their money in a savings account, they should put it into a brokerage account so that they can see higher returns. Um, the only caveat I will add to this is that they should only save or only put money into a brokerage account, only money that they can afford losing. Like if you can afford losing $40 a month, I think your investment is pretty safe. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um, Osvaldo, I think we are almost out of time. How much time do you have now?
Yeah. No, I mean we can wrap up. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
So,
yeah, I think you said it very well. I think, like you said, it's investing doesn't have to be this grandiose thing that it's gonna take up all your money or that it's risky. I know um there's a really big misconception, right? Especially in the Latino community, in Mexicans and Hispanics in general.
mhm,
There's this big fear, and I think there's it comes down, I think, to maybe a lack of it's one, it's a lack of understanding, right, of what it actually is. So one,
Mhm.
we need more education. But two,
Mhm.
I think there's just a general fear of the government or of financial institutions. And there's this fear, I think that's maybe it goes back to the old days, right, where people couldn't trust the government because the currency was always changing, right? Or they would go leave their money in the bank and then before they knew it, then oh, we don't have your money anymore, right? It's gone, or
Mhm.
yeah, we don't know, like we just can't pay you out.
Mhm.
And so there's just this fear that oh, if I give my money to somebody
Mhm.
to take care of it, it's just gonna get lost, right?
Mhm.
I'm gonna lose my money.
Mhm.
And some people might see the stock market even as gambling, right? That it's a form of gambling
Mhm.
because you can lose, which is true. You can lose your money, but the thing is, you don't lose your money until you realize that, until you sell, right? So you can see your account value go down, but until you sell that stock, you won't see those losses, right? So a lot of times we need to be comfortable with seeing our account go down
Mhm.
with the expectation that it's gonna go up, right? Eventually, when the economy gets better, when the companies do better, and your account should eventually, right? The idea is that your account will return to normalcy, and you'll start seeing positive returns. But
Mhm.
you got to be comfortable with the idea that in the short term you might be down, right? Your account actually might go down. It's like a property, right? It's like with a house. Well, with people that are, I think that's something that Hispanics are more familiar, right? We have a lot of homeowners in the US that are Hispanic or Mexican that they'll buy a house for a set amount of money, and then within a year or two they see, oh, the property value has gone down, right? Because the market's going down. But you
Mhm.
haven't lost until you sell. The moment you sell the house, and that's when you lose, right? But if you hold on to that house, you hold on to that property, it's like you'll see a substantial gain on your return on that money, on that property.
Mhm.
And we've seen this in the last 5 years, right? Somebody bought a house in 2008 or 2007 before the financial crisis, probably would have seen a 20-30% decline on that house, on that property, if
Mhm.
they sold. But if they held on to it, now that house is basically doubled in price for what they paid for it in 2007.
That's a great point, and I liked what you told me once also about the stock market. That can you repeat that again? Like that if the stock market goes to zero, I
Yeah,
think that's
so
a great example.
yeah, I think the what gives me at least some peace of mind with investing in the stock market is that our financial system revolves around the stock market, right? It's the cornerstone of American finance and our economy, really. So the moment the stock market essentially goes to zero, right? It becomes completely worthless. Our financial system, as we know it, is ceases to exist, and in which case our money means nothing, right? It's just becomes paper, and essentially it's all it's good for is burning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would at that point, if we were to ever get to that point where the stock market goes to zero, at that point, you're what's really gonna matter is what you actually own, right? Yeah, your
Mhm.
property, your car, the food, everything you have stocked up, like this is like we're talking about end times, right?
Right.
Armageddon.
Yes. Yes. That's a
But it is possible, right?
it
This
is
same
possible.
can that happen? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we it's also possible. I know there's also this idea that the stock market just keeps going up, right? We know that's actually not true. We look at, or at least with Japan, right?
Right.
1989, they
Mhm.
were basically flat. They had like a 20-30% decline, and they've just recovered back to that point from
Mm.
1989. The stock market just basically broke that
Wow.
that high of 1989.
But if you didn't sell for all those years, you didn't lose. You just had to wait 20 years.
Yeah, you would have made essentially, yeah, you would make your money back, right? So like you said, it has to be you have to be willing to lose that money, right? What you're investing.
Mhm. That's why start slow, start small, do your research. What are some of the tools or places that somebody can start investing today?
Yeah, so there's a lot of brokerage firms that you can go with, or guess you can. There's like Schwab, Fidelity, Robinhood is a very good one to get started. It's just very easy to open. Their UI, their user interface it's very nice. It's very easy to use, and that's a good. And I think now, and they allow reinvestment. You can do dollar cost averaging, right? I think
Yes.
you have some experience with that, right?
Yes. I would just, yeah, I would say personally, Robinhood has been my to go to. I also have Fidelity, but that's for more my 401k. Um, but with Robinhood, what I like is that I can set it up to invest $1 a day. Literally, it will take $1 out of my bank account every single day and invest it in the stocks or the ETFs that I decide on. And it's just I don't even have to think about it. It's just taking that money out and making it grow. Uh, and I will highly recommend it. I mean, again, do your research. Robinhood is not the only tool, but it's one that has worked for me, and it seems like you have some good experience with it as well. There's also Webull. We will
Yeah.
include some
E
links.
Trade.
E-Trade. I will include a link to the Robinhood app in the description of the video below for those who are interested. Robinhood gives you a free stock if you sign up. So I will get a free stock, you get a free stock, which is a win-win. If anybody's interested, there will be a link in the description below. But like we are saying, I think invest, start small, do your research, and be willing to wait. Going back to the earlier point that you made, um, about the marshmallows. You know, don't eat your marshmallows just yet. Be willing to sacrifice and to be patient, and it will pay off in the long term.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Osvaldo, anything else you think you want to add before we finish?
No, I think that was well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time again. There's so many things I wanted to talk to you about today. We didn't even get to half of it, so we're gonna have to do part two.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely down. Yeah, there's so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Cesar.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
No,
To
like
catch up and in person too. We'll have to meet up soon.
yes, yes. Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Osvaldo. I'll catch up to you later. Okay.
Take care. All right, bye.
Bye.